Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, webcast, webinar. We're so excited to have Steve Dinan join us today from CarBahn and excited to hear what he's got going on. We're going to jump right in and get going. So, Steve, you have been a figure in the BMW enthusiast and motorsport community for probably longer than both of us really want to admit on camera. But you've been a big supporter of BMW CCA. We're really excited from M Chapter to be able to have you join us today. So there may be some folks who may not be familiar with CarBahn, possibly with yourself. So maybe just get us started with a quick intro of who is CarBahn, what do you do, what do you specialize in?
Okay, well, let's start with going back to the history books. In 1979, I founded Dinan. Dinan is the high-performance BMW tuning company. It grew a lot, and in 1997, we wound up with an arrangement with BMW where we could sell cars out of the dealership network. Ultimately, when I sold the company in 2013, so it's 10 years ago now, we had 185 car dealerships and independent shops selling Dinan product throughout the United States. We were doing about 3,000 cars a year.
Wow.
So all that out of my garage at home. I dropped out of school when I was 22, and I was working as a BMW tech, and I saved up $5,000, and I went to my garage at home, and I bought an old drafting table where I used to draft on paper, and I would design parts and make them out of my garage at home. That's
Did
how I
you
started.
study in mechanical engineering design?
I did. I went to automotive technical school to become a mechanic, and I got a job as a mechanic. That I started taking engineering courses, and I finally realized after about 3 years of night courses in college that they weren't going to teach me how to make cars go fast. They were going to teach me basic mechanical engineering. So I went out and bought all the race car engineering books I could find, some of them Society of Automotive Engineering, some of them done by other people. And I read them all, and I self-taught myself the balance. So wow. I don't have a degree, but I do have a lot of experience, and I've read a lot of stuff, and I've run a lot of race cars. During this entire time, we also raced cars. We started racing cars in 1980, a year after I started the company. We won our first championship in SCCA GT2 racing in 1980, and we have the track record in GT2 at Laguna Seca and at Sonoma, which used to be Sears Point. And I've been racing the entire time as well. So on top of the 43 years of tuning cars, I've won 12 racing championships, including the 24 Hours of Daytona twice with Chip Ganassi overall, GT3 championship with Alpina in Germany. So I have a global motorsports impact as well as tuning BMWs. I sold the company I sold the company in 2013. Went to work for Chip Ganassi to help him launch the Ford GT program that went back on Le Mans. So I moved to Indianapolis for a year. Decided I didn't like Indianapolis all that much, and the job I got given was more of a corporate job than an engineering job, but I didn't really like the job very much. I love the folks at Ganassi. I worked with them for 4 years in prototype racing. I say we won 3 championships and 2 24 Hours Daytona overall, and the North American Endurance Championships. I won 5 championships with Chip and his group. Great bunch of people. It just wasn't the right job for me. I had not sold my house in California, so I moved back to California and started CarBahn. Only because I'm not the retiring type. I tried that for a few months. And I went insane, and I decided that I'm happy working till the day before they put me in the ground. And I'm okay with that, because I'm one of these people that's blessed to get to do their hobby for a living and make money at it. And who has that opportunity? I mean, my wife said, so why don't you just rent a big like industrial building and buy a bunch of cars like you have behind you there, and then tinker with your garage in the garage for fun. And I said, okay, honey, but I get to work on all kinds of brand new and exotic race cars, street cars and race cars every day. And I get paid for it. Why would I want to go spend my own money to tinker in a garage by myself? I said, this makes no sense to me. She finally agreed and said, all right, we'll just go back to work then. So I took about 40% of the money I made from selling Dinan, and I started CarBahn.
Fantastic. Well, that's a really good segue, and like, wow, what a legacy there. Let's jump in a little bit on kind of some thoughts on the current generation of the M cars, the current product being released by BMW. Sure. Kind of curious, what from your perspective, what do they have in common? Where are you finding opportunities for improvement? I think that's always an interesting question, because the cars, objectively get better and faster with every generation. So what's still on the table? What can you still eke out of these cars? Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, in some ways better, some ways worse. And why don't we talk about that first?
Okay.
The really old cars like the E30 behind you and even the E36 and E46 are the reason I fell in love with BMW to start with, because they're very tactile, they're very raw, they communicate with you very well on the limits. They're not as fast as the new cars, but honestly, they're more rewarding to drive quickly because of the way they talk to you and communicate with you and how you can feel the car when it's like. The new cars, because of they keep getting heavier because of all the electronics we're putting in them and airbags and safety equipment, and then they keep getting more powerful. And as they get more powerful, the car companies get more nervous about liability and they put more electronics in them. And the result of all that has been the cars are significantly faster than they used to be, but they're relatively numb to the communication relative to the old cars. I'm not saying they don't communicate. I mean, BMW still always communicate better than just about any car you ever made. Only thing would be on that level would be like a Porsche or Ferrari from a communication standpoint. Lotuses do that pretty well too. But they don't communicate like the old cars.
Yeah.
But they are faster and they are safer and they are more luxurious.
Yeah.
But they're also heavier and less connected. So that's what you get.
No, that's an interesting point. Me and my friends often get in discussions about this, especially, since I come from an era where I've driven these older, lighter cars and I've also driven all the newer cars. And sometimes you just don't really feel that weight in these new cars. There's this like masking property that kind of happens for the driver. What can you explain what that phenomena is? Why are we feeling that?
Well, there's all kinds of things that done to new cars. When the power kept going up, and honestly, the question is, where are we going to end? Like, we're adding about 50 horsepower to 100 horsepower per generation of M car. Like E39 was 400, and then the new E60 was 500. Then there was 560 on the F10, and now we're at 617. I think is where the brand new M5 M8 comp is, and I guess the next one will be 650 or 7. The question is, and the aftermarket is oftentimes getting 800, 900, 1,000, even 1,100, 1,200 when people get very carried away on modern cars with turbos. The question is, what is the practical amount of power have in a street car? I mean, racing has gone the other way in order to reduce cost, and because we can make so much power now, racing now has inlet restrictors on all the modern cars and they've actually detuned them. So now our street cars have more power than our race cars, which is also kind of odd. In the old days, it was the other way around. Your race car had twice as much power as your street car. Now your street car has 25 or 30% more power than your race car. That's where the world is headed. But in any event, there's so much you can do the new cars because they come with turbochargers, and the electronics keep getting better, more sophisticated, more capable of monitoring what's going on as far as the engine and the drivetrain's health and making adjustments. That we can safely get a lot of power out of cars. And we just finished tuning, I have a new 2022 M4 comp, all-wheel drive, X-drive. And we wound up making 750 flywheel horsepower with software and heat exchanger.
Wow.
I mean, think about that. When I was a kid, a hot rod was a 350 horse, 350 Chevys. That was 350 cubic inch, and our goal was to get 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Okay, that was a 5.7 liter engine. Now we have a 3-liter engine making over twice the power of a 5.7 liter engine. So almost half, 55% of the size, making more than twice the power, making 1/100th of the pollution and getting 3 times the gas mileage.
And for the most part, motors that don't blow up, right? Like they can
and
run that.
As long as you're reasonable with the power, they're actually very reliable.
Yeah.
The problem with the aftermarket is, and I try and be the exception, this is kind of what I've gotten to be famous for, is there's a whole bunch of limiters inside the software now. My exhaust gas temperature is too high, my torque is too high, my charge air temperature is too high, my engine block temperature is too high, and it takes all these things and they're layered on top of each other and does an accumulation of all this data and determines how much safe power the engine can produce. Now, all these limits are tunable. So you can set the limits anywhere you want. It's your judgment as to what you think is safe. Most of the aftermarket turns all the limiters off except for torque, and then just tunes the thing like they basically give the computer a lobotomy and turns it into like a 1985 ECU. And I'm sitting there going, well, okay, if we have all this new technology where we can make all the safety, why are we turning it all off? So we will spend a couple months with each calibration. It's very tedious, tuning all the limiters to just a different value with a data logger on the car to determine what we believe is safe. And then that's what enables us to give the factory matching warranty, like I used to when I owned Dinan, and we do again with CarBahn, where you can tune your car. Like that 750 horsepower comes with a 40 or 50,000 mile warranty.
Wow. That's very, very, I think, reassuring to a lot of folks who are looking to go to that next step.
Yeah, and that's full drivetrain, engine, gearbox, differential, everything affected by the power for 4 years and 50,000 miles for like $1,500.
Wow. Yeah, amazing.
We don't make money at that. That's kind of our cost.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking you must have like a team of like software engineers. Are you guys like reverse engineering how all this stuff works? Can you describe a little bit about your process, how you go about doing this?
Yeah, well, it starts off by I used to be a race car driver before I started building race cars, and I've tuned a lot of street cars, obviously thousands at this point. I don't even know how many. And so it starts off by we buy a brand new car and I drive it around for a month. And then Steve gives impressions as to what he likes and what he doesn't like about the car.
Fair.
And then we come up with a list of things we think will fix it. And there's two teams. One's a mechanical engineering team, and one of them is the engine side, which has heat exchangers, intercoolers, turbos, and the other side is chassis, shock springs, sway bars, toe links, things like that. And then we have a third team of software calibrators and software hackers. Everybody gets their assignments, and you'd like to predict when things will be done, but since you've never seen the car before and you've never hacked the software before, you don't know if that process is a 3-month process or a 3-year process. Right. So the time frame in which products get released sort of dictate themselves based on what you have the ability to hack and understand.
Yeah.
Even though you'd like to have this happen first and this happen second, we start all these projects in parallel with the 3 teams, and they come out at different rates. Okay. Right. You'd have very little control over it. And you can attempt to force them, but if you do that, you're going to make compromises that are going to affect the integrity of the car or the product. And you just can't do that. So yeah. Every time I start a new car, I think I've learned enough that I can get it done in under a year. And every time it takes me about 18 months from the beginning to end, to soup to nuts, to really understand a car. And I'm always the last to market because I do the most amount of validation and research, and that makes me always last, which is frustrating as a business person. I'd like to be first. Yeah. But I just can't understand that. I mean, I have competitors that have products out a month after a car is made. I'm still driving the car. In the second month, I'm taking it apart and measuring it. And these people are selling stuff, and I haven't even figured out how the thing works yet, and haven't measured everything and understanding what I can do.
Yeah.
So my impression is they're skipping most of the good engineering steps you should do to engineer and validate a product. That's the only conclusion I can come to.
Right.
They're all like 10 times smarter than me. I guess that's a possibility too. But I
yeah. So with that kind of long development cycle, like how much time is actually like, kind of the learning and development part, and how much time is the testing and QA? Like, where does that kind of balance fit? When do you sign off and say, yes, this is ready for market?
Honestly, it's relatively easy to design parts in the CAD and then 3D print them and make them. That's honestly the shortest part of the entire process, is just making the part.
Yeah.
The analysis is probably a third of it. It takes that long to really understand it.
Yeah.
It takes us probably another third to design everything we're going to make, and then probably another third to validate it and make changes to it that make it happy so we can sell it. And that's where the 18 months comes from. If you skip the analysis and the validation, you can knock out an entire car in 6 months, but then it's like you're doing your R&D on your consumers.
Right. Yeah.
When it has problems, and it's not something I'm morally okay with. Some people might be, but I'm not. It's also part of the reason I've always offered a factory matching warranty, because I feel if you've done a good job, you've done your due diligence, then you should stand behind your product. I mean, what product can you buy in the world that doesn't come with a warranty? Can you imagine buying a new BMW if it didn't come with a warranty? Because BMW didn't want to do their due diligence? No, I mean, so any real company is going to do their due diligence, and then they should stand behind their product. And if they're not willing to stand behind their product, then it's probably not right. That's my guess.
There is some risk taking out there for sure.
There is.
So what do you have right now in terms of test mules? What are you developing for, and what's some of the current new product out for M cars?
Yeah, right now we're doing a lot of S58, which is a new 6-cylinder, and the X3M, X4M, M3, M4, and then the M2 Comp. Right now we own an X3M, an M4 Comp, and an M2 Comp, a brand new 2023 M2 Comp.
Yeah.
We also own the M8, which is in the backdrop picture that we did a couple of years ago. We're doing some new products for that as well that also fit the M5. And we also are borrowing, we don't own this one, from a customer who's nice enough to let us borrow it. We give him free parts, an X5M, which will also encompass the X6M. So right now we're doing S63 TU4, the new V8, and we're doing a lot of S58 engine stuff and chassis stuff.
Wow. Are you going to get a M4 CSL? Is that going to be
Probably not. I mean, it's similar enough to the M4, and I have the comp version with the competition seats and the carbon ceramic brakes, and so that's
yeah. But you guys also developed for the B58 engine, right? It's not just the M engines.
Yeah, the B58 engine is surprisingly similar to the S58 engine. What they've done is all the components inside the engine are made less expensively, I guess would be the right word, and not as durable. A lot of people are trying to make a lot of power out of those cars because they don't want to spend the money on an M car. But when you tune them like an M car, they break. They're not designed for that. Where the M car engines are substantially improved from BMW, so you can extract a lot more out of them safely. Having said that, 800 is about the limit on a 6-cylinder, 3-liter 6-cylinder from a durability standpoint. People are making 1,000, 11, 1,200 horsepower, but it's like our internal use is you pull the pin on the grenade when you pull it out of the garage and you want to see when it's going to go off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Some people's idea of durability in those things is it lasts 5 or 10,000 miles. My idea of durability is 125,000 miles is what we shoot for after a car is tuned. Anything under 100,000 miles is unacceptable from our standpoint, which is why we're able to give the 4-year, 50,000-mile warranty. We also have done a deal with an aftermarket insurance company. You can buy an extended warranty on a CarBahn car now too, for up to 100,000 miles.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So do you have a favorite M car at the moment? Maybe this is a two-part question. A favorite current M car and a favorite M car of all time.
Well, I'm a new car guy, even though I complain about the tactile sensation, the weight of them, because they're always faster. They're always more luxurious. So I always like the newest car the best. Having said that, I recently did an M3 E46 for one of my race car sponsors' kids who's driving an Indy Lights, and I made it for him when he was 16. He's 18 now. And I fell in love with the car again. I remembered why I fell in love with BMWs after I did a suspension on it and tuned it and drove it around for a couple of days. I decided I wanted to go buy an E46 M3. It's just a fun car to drive. Isn't that a weird thing?
No, not at all. It's fantastic. It's one of the things missing in the garage here. We'll work on that. But
yeah, okay. So anyway, so I really like the M8 because I think it's really sexy and it's super fast in a straight line. And honestly, on the road, I can drive so well that a lighter, better handling car doesn't really do me any good because I can drive the bigger, heavier car at any reasonable pace that you could drive any car on the highway without killing everyone. So to me, the smaller cars like the M2s and the M3s, M4s are if you live up in the canyons or if you're doing track days, because you give up a lot of luxury for a few hundred pounds, and you can't really extract the handling around the corners on the street because it isn't safe. And in the straight line, they're not as fast. Right. So I have a new M4 comp. I love the car. And when I want to go out on a 2-lane country road drive, I take that car. And then when I drive every day, I drive the M8. To me, people always ask me which car I like better. They're for different reasons.
Yeah.
When I was younger and I had kids, I always had a 4-door car, like a 535 or an M5. Now that I'm older and I don't have any kids, I always have 2-door cars, but they run the same. That doesn't really matter. So the M8's my luxury daily driver, and the M3, M4 is my fun weekend windy road car.
Yeah. So I've had the privilege of driving some of the new G8X cars, and I think they're just like incredible. The experience that you get behind the wheel is really amazing.
Yep.
What are you able to do? What are some of the tweaks you're doing on the new M3, M4s?
Yeah. Well, we have the 750 horsepower. We're now working on a intake manifold intercooler kit and a meth kit, and the target is 800 flywheel horsepower. We think that's safe with a factory matching warranty.
Wow.
We're also doing a coilover suspension kit that drops all over the electric dampers, so you can keep the electric dampers for different stiffness. And we're also making front monoballs and rear toe links and larger anti-roll bars and camber plates to make the car handle well, as well as wheels and tires. We're going to be adding tranny coolers and engine coolers to the car so it's more durable with the boost turned up. I went to Thunder Hill last month and did about 40 laps in the M4 with just the software and the heat exchanger. Final test on durability is I get in the car, and if I can't break it, the company decides it can't be broken because nobody knows anybody that drives a street car faster than I do on the street. So we did 4 poles to 185 miles an hour on the way to Thunder Hill. I won't tell you what road. I don't want to get a ticket in the mail, but
And those of us that are that drive that road probably have an idea, but we'll leave that alone.
there's one good straight section, and I had my race car sponsor his son and their luggage in the back, so there was 3 people in the car and bags. And we did 185 4 times, and then we took the bags and the people in the car, and I gave rides to my race car engineering staff who'd never been around the racetrack in the passenger seat for 40 laps, and then we drove it home and did 185 2 more times. And then Steve blessed it, and we started selling it. So that just got launched a couple of weeks ago. That was the final validation test. I mean, it has hundreds and hundreds of pulls in the dynamometer and on the road before that.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, people don't drive as fast as I do. And a lot of times my employees tell me everything's good. And then I get in the car and I somehow can break it or get it to set a fault that nobody else can get it to do. So the final test is always me.
Right. What are some of the specific vehicle dynamic things that you're finding that are coming from BMW from the factory? And what are those things you're able to improve, like specifically the way it feels? What with these upgraded components, what can a driver expect to feel with an upgraded car?
Well, what's really neat about the new cars is the all-wheel drive has made it so the power is useful.
Yeah.
If you go like the F10 M5 and you make 800 or 1,000 horsepower, all it does is go sideways and spin the tires. The same thing with the S55, the old M2 comp, and old M3, M4, the F series. And I have all kinds of customers trying to make 1,000 horsepower. We made more than 850 horsepower, and you hit a bump at wide open throttle in the 4th gear, and the car goes sideways at like 120 miles an hour. Well, how you can use 1,000 horsepower, I cannot figure out. You can't even keep it pointed straight in a straight line.
Yeah.
Now, the cool thing about the brand new cars, if you opt for the all-wheel drive, which I highly recommend, there's so much traction that honestly, you can launch the car and it spins the tires for 10 feet and just goes.
Wow.
Our 0 to 60 time in the new M4 was 2.7 seconds in drive. And then I think we did a rollout where you don't have to do a burnout. I think it was 2.55, 0 to 60. It's really, that's like almost Tesla Plaid electric times, right? I mean, we're a 10th off that with a gasoline powered 3-liter 6-cylinder. It's pretty phenomenal. So the traction is huge. I highly recommend the automatic transmission, not the manual, even though a lot of people want to buy the manual, but the clutch and the manual won't hold the same torque. You lose almost a second a lap in shift times, almost a half second, a quarter mile in shift times, and it's not as durable.
Interesting.
So it's fun to drive the manual. I mean, I understand why people like driving them, but from a guy who just likes to go fast, paddle shift race speed automatic and an all-wheel drive is significantly quicker.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, because the cars are not going to get sideways when the turbo spools up, they feel more comfortable taking understeer out of the car. So one thing I've noticed about the brand new all-wheel drive cars is they're more neutral stock. Which is very interesting. I have a brand new M2 comp, and they dialed a fair amount of understeer into it. One, and they also detuned the engine, like I think about 100 horsepower from the regular M3, M4, even though it's the automatic one. I bought the paddle shifter car.
Yeah.
Because I think they're worried with the short wheelbase, and if they made the same amount of power, that as soon as you got on the throttle, if somebody turned the stability control, if the car would go sideways and someone would spin off the road. So they put enough understeer into the car, so you have to wait to get in the throttle. And by the time you get on the throttle, there's so much understeer, it barely gives a wiggle in the back and it just drives off the corner. So it's very benign. But we're planning on making that go from, I think it's 440 horsepower stock to 750s, 800, the same as the M3, M4.
Oh my.
So our project for that car is going to be, how do we keep the back end under the back end? And I don't mean from a mechanical standpoint, I mean from a driver's standpoint, right?
Yeah, right.
So we're going to be adding a lot of suspension work to that car, and we're probably going to be adding some downforce to the rear of that car, so its speed, the car is more stable in the back. So we're going to tune it so it picks up understeer with velocity. That way you have a neutral car in really tight corners, and you get a little understeer in the fast stuff just to keep it safe. But when you add 800 horsepower to a 2-wheel drive car, you're going to be able to get it sideways. I mean, that's
comes with the territory.
That comes with the territory, right? So from that standpoint, I think the M4 all-wheel drive is a dramatically better car. I love driving the M2. It's a really fun car, but the M4 is going to be significantly quicker.
Yeah. Great. Well, we've talked a lot about M cars. We started off talking a little bit about racing. So I'm very curious to dive into that a little bit. Who are some of your favorite racing idols? What got you into motorsport racing specifically, and what is your relationship with racing today?
Well, I've always liked high performance cars, and racing sort of goes with that territory. My family didn't race, and we never watched car racing. Like nobody in my family ever liked car racing, so I didn't get into car racing until I was 29. I didn't even realize it existed. But my wife made the mistake of, in 1976, taking me to Laguna Seca Formula 5000 race that Mario Andretti won. I think it was in a Viceroy Lola, tuning up to go to Formula One when he won the championship in '78 in the Lotus. So he was doing road racing in America as a driver tune-up before he went to Europe. He was phenomenal to watch him. He was so quick and so precise. He just decimated the field. It was down at the old Laguna Seca before they had the infield.
Yeah.
I went to one race, and I have to say that was it for me for the rest of my life. There's like nothing else I wanted to do. The problem is my family doesn't have any money. And the first thing I learned about racing is it's very expensive, and I couldn't afford it. So I started the business in 1979 with the idea I was going to make enough money to spend some money on racing. And I rented believe it or not, an Arco gas station was my first facility. It had 2 stalls, and they had not converted into a convenience store yet. And the gas station owner didn't want to work on cars. He just wanted to pump gas. And so he rented me the 2 stalls. I forget the dollar amount. It was like $350 a month or something. Something ridiculous like that. And he was an ex-NASCAR driver. So we started talking about racing. He goes, well, I'd like to get back into racing. I said, well, that sounds like fun. So he shows up next week with a 2002 race car in a trailer that he bought from a guy by the name of Peter Herkey in Northern California. And it was a decent car. It had some pretty fundamental things I thought I could fix. And so, like I said, we went and fixed those things. Some were engine, some were chassis. And we wound up winning the championship in our first year and winning 7 out of 9 races and set 2-track records. Well, then I figured out not only did I love racing, but I was actually good at it. And then I was really done. So yeah. I probably raced every year since then, except for when I didn't have money. And probably in the 43 years, probably 10 years, I couldn't show up because I just had no money, had no sponsors, had no customers.
Yeah.
To arrive.
I remember back in the day, there was that outrageous E34 M5 IMSA race car that you guys built.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That thing was a freaking hoot to watch go around the track.
Yeah, that was CCA World Challenge car, actually. But yeah, that was a 750 horsepower, 900 pound-feet of torque with the front engine moved behind the front wheels, almost mid-engine, driving from the back seat with like 3,000 pounds of downforce. It was really a fun car. That was my last race car as a driver. It was really neat car. That was the culmination of my life's work up until that point. But even then, our budget was $10,000 a race. There was 10 races, and our competitors were spending 25.
Wow.
Like I never made enough money, and my family never had enough money to really do it right. And so I never even completed a season in a car. I think the first year I did 5 races. The second year I did 6 races. The third year I did 9 out of 10, and I ran out of money every year. Had a lot of top 5s, but I actually built the car, designed the car, built the engine, dyno tuned the engine, went to the racetrack, tested the chassis, set up the car, and drove it myself. I had one
grassroots.
I had one crew guy, but we did really well. I think I got half a dozen top 5s, several podiums. We would run with the fast factory-based cars at the time, but they always had just a little edge on us, like 2 or 3 or 4 tenths of a second that we just never could extract, whether that was my driving ability or whether engineering ability or it was money. I don't know.
Right. But what is your relationship? What is CarBahn's relationship with racing today? What do you have partnerships? Are you still involved? And what series? What's that look like?
Yeah, when I started CarBahn is not just BMW anymore. We decided to do all German high-end cars, so it's BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, and Audi. In order to prove to the world we weren't just BMW guys, we decided this time not to race a BMW. And I've raced a BMW from the beginning of time for all the way through 2013. So whatever that comes out to be, 33 years, something like that, 34 years. So we started out with an Audi R8 and GT4 in IMSA. We won the championship on our second year in 2019. We came back in 2020 and almost won it again. We finished second because we had a gearbox failure on the last race. And what's funny is we put a brand new gearbox in because we life parts in race cars before they fail, so they don't fail. And the brand new gearbox failed. And probably the old one wouldn't have. So we gave away the 2 championships back to back on a transmission. But we still finished second in the points in the second year. Then we moved up to GTD, which is GT3, which is IMSA WeatherTech, because our sponsors were happy with us. And we won our second race at Detroit Grand Prix. So it was a pretty impressive debut. And then that was just the sprint series. And the following year, we moved to the Lamborghini Huracan for the whole year. did not have a good year. We wound up getting in a lot of accidents, not necessarily our fault, but people hitting us. So we wound up totaling like 3 race cars in,
Oh.
in 2022. So it was a very expensive year. And then because it was so expensive, the sponsors didn't want to come up with more money for us to repeat. So we went back down to GT4 and to Michelin Pilot Nips, and now we're racing a Porsche Cayman. And the reason we switched from Audi was Audi decided they didn't want to sponsor motorsports in North America anymore. And there's a manufacturer's fee you have to pay to IMSA. I think it's around $800,000 to be allowed to race a car in the series. And Audi wouldn't pay the money, so the car wasn't eligible. So at the time, I ordered one GTD/GT3 Audi and 3 GT4A. So I had 4 R8s. I had to sell them all at half price and switch to a Porsche because it wasn't legal to race the car anymore, which is and it took between the accidents we had last year and then selling 4 cars and buying 2 new ones, it consumed half of our budget. So we had to go down a class in 2023, which is where we are now.
Do you think there's any future with racing a BMW chassis in the future?
Sure. Every time I go to get a new car, I go to BMW and I say, hey, BMW, what do you have? And BMW doesn't seem super enthusiastic about helping us. And I don't know why, since I won 12 racing championships for them. I did all their engine development in Grand Am. I did all their track sport, all their balance performance of adjustments and politicking for them. And BMW used to sponsor me. BMW used to give me money to do that.
Yes.
But when I got to racing an M3 or an M4, they said, well, you can buy one if you want, and here's what they cost.
Right.
I said, okay, well, since I'm doing 4 brands and I've done a BMW my whole life, I was kind of interested in a change. So I would look around and see what was available and talk to all the car manufacturers, see who wanted to help me. And all the other car manufacturers are willing to do more for me based on my reputation with BMW than BMW is willing to do for me.
Wow.
Which I don't really understand, but that's where we are.
Well, let's hope that maybe those relationships advance forward and we get to see you behind a BMW sponsored car in the future. How can we keep in touch with what's going on with you and motorsports? What's the best way to kind of follow the action?
Well, I mean, all the broadcasts are on TV. They're on YouTube TV, and also I think Peacock streaming as well. There's a bunch of great websites now, Sports Car 365. There's all kinds of places to go to get racing news. There's more information than ever. The racing coverage is incredible these days with in-car cameras, and there's so much video. It's unbelievable.
Steve, this has been absolutely amazing. I think we're going to wrap it up here. But before we go, please tell us how can people engage with your products? Explain your dealer network. How can people learn about the parts and things and where to get them installed, that sort of stuff?
Well, we're designing so much stuff right now and releasing it. We're putting out a product almost every week right now. You can go on our social media, CarBahn Official. You can go into carbahn.com and sign up for our newsletter, and then we'll send you a newsletter every time we have a new product. We're up to almost 90 dealers again.
Oh, wow.
At 185, we sold Dinan. Some of those are our old dealers that came back because they didn't like the new Dinan after it was sold, and they liked the CarBahn, which operates kind of like the old Dinan used to. I'm very big into customer service, not just the validation and the warranty, but taking care of my customers. And I find very few companies give customer service like I give. And so companies like doing business with me because I take care of them.
Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. And I will be a sworn customer for life. I've got some fantastic Dinan suspension on my E90 here, and I used it a lot. I used it hard on the track, and some things wore, and you guys were great about getting it back together, back in tip-top shape. And thank you so much for taking your time today and speaking to us here at BMW CCA and M Chapter. I hope we can do this again. Maybe we'll do a part 2 and dive into some more topics. So thanks so much, and we hope to see you out at the track.
All right, great to see you again. I love your garage.
Thank you. Something like yours even better.
My garage is in my house. It's just an ordinary garage I park my car in every day. All my cars are at work.
Love it. All right, Steve. Thanks again.
Bye.